Uh, a very good evening, a very late evening, ladies and gentlemen. We shall continue our lesson on comparing two groups with t-tests and similar non-parametric tests movie series. So let us go to what we have and will cover in the subsequent movies. As you were well aware already that we did cover one multi-test already. We also covered independent samples t-test in the previous movie. And today's lesson is about paired sample t-test. I would like to inform you that I will come back to the non-parametric Mann-Whitney U-test in the next movie. So let's dive directly into paired samples t-test. So I would love to start this movie with, the research questions that require the employment or the performing of paired samples t-test. For example, the first question looks like this. Is the practice of yoga effective in reducing the level of stress? So you see let's deconstruct the meanings of this a powerful or important research question. So basically, this research question implies that you are going to collect data from the same group of respondents or subjects. So the sample is only one. There is only one sample in your study, but you are going to collect the data from the same sample first time and second time, and you ask them about the level of stress before yoga lesson, and you go back to them again. You approach the same subjects or the same participants again after yoga lesson, and you collect the same kind of data from them. So embedded in this research question is some concepts. And the first concept is the researcher collect the data from the same group of subjects, and the researcher collects the data from that group of subject twice on this dependent variable. Mean that they ask the same group of subjects the same set of questions, and those questions are about the level of stress they experience before they practice yoga and after they practice yoga. So such research questions, ladies and gentlemen, is very appropriate. It's very appropriate for the employment or the performing of paired sample t-test. So I hope you could see a clear distinction between the rationale behind paired samples t-test and one sample t-test and independent samples t-test. I would love to provide you with another research question also. Do participant sisters or brothers spend more time on social media? So I want to deconstruct this research question again. Let's deconstruct this question together. So basically, you are going to collect the data from, for example, from 30 children at your workplace. Let's say you teach at a school, and you want to know whether the children's sisters or brothers spend more time on social media. So you're gonna survey 30 children, and you ask them about about the amount of time that their sisters and brothers spend on social media. For example, on average, uh, uh, how much time they spend on social media per day. So basically, each child a pair has a pair of sister and brother. Another child has another pair of sister and brother. Another child has a pair of sister and brother. So basically, uh, one child or one subject or one participant in your study provide you with two pieces of data that are matched, that are related. In this situation, their brothers and sister are basically matched or paired or related in some way. So this research question is also appropriate for the employment or the performing of paired sample t-test. Let's go to the third example. Is there a significant difference in participants' EPT pre-test and post-test scores? So, ladies and gentlemen, this is very obvious. Again, it is very obvious that the same group of participants are approached twice by the researcher. The researcher asked them to do a pre-test on English language proficiency, and then the researcher approached them again. For example, after 6 months interval, in order to ask them to do the same test, and the researcher could collect both pre-test and post-test score, and then he or she could compare the pre-test score with the post-test score accordingly. So again, if you look at research question 1, 2, and 3, you're gonna see the pattern, the pattern of concept here. The same group, the same group, the same groups of participants, is approached twice by the researcher. In particular, they want to collect the pre-test and the post-test score. Except research question 2, where the researcher does not go to the children twice, but similarly, the researcher asked, the 30 children invited to participate in the study to supply, two pieces of data. One piece of data is for their sister, and another piece of data is for their brother. So basically, this is kind of research question that is appropriate for paired sample t-test. I would love to give you the last sample here. Are there significant differences in participant perception of extensive reading and time spent on extensive reading before and after the intervention? I want to elaborate on this research question a little bit. Government around the world, have been working so hard in order to promote extensive reading or to cultivate the reading habits among the population, in particular among the young population. And I think if someone comes up with a research design where uh, where where he asks the subjects to read like 6 novels per year, because he believes that by reading the novels that are interesting, that are useful, such intervention, such reading experiment, reading novel experiment could transform the perceptions as well as the time spent on extensive reading, that would be a wonderful research. Let's say that research is being conducted, and the researcher asks a group of university students, let's say 50 of them, to read, let's say, best-selling novels, because the researcher expects that after finishing six interesting bestsellers novels, the subjects or the participant gonna dramatically transform their perception of extensive reading, and they will spend more time on extensive reading rather than spending less time or spending no time or spending a lot of time on social media or other activities that are not productive, that are not going to contribute to their happiness or success. That's kind of cool. So the researcher want to see whether the perception of extensive reading before and after reading the novel have changed in a positive way, or whether the participants gonna report more time spent on extensive reading after having gone through the experiment after having read the six novels. So again, ladies and gentlemen, so such research questions are very, very cool, very, very useful for the societies, and paired sample t-test could be a powerful statistical choice at the disposal for the researcher. So I want to give some more concepts, in addition to the research question. So the paired sample t-test is used, one, when the two scores are repeated measures, such as self-esteem test score and self-esteem retest score. So you can see the keyword self-esteem test score and self-esteem retest score. So basically, this is called repeated measures. Why? Because a self-esteem test is administered twice. In other words, the subjects or the respondents are asked, to rate their level of self-esteem, let's say before a program or an intervention, and they are also asked to rate their level of self-esteem again after the program or intervention have been delivered. So basically, repeated measures refer to the situation where the researcher uses the instrument twice in order to measure the same construct, or in this situation, the researcher measures self-esteem twice using the same research instrument. So basically, the measure or the instrument or the questionnaire is repeated, is used two times here in this context. So this is the first rationale for the performing of paired sample t-test. Another research design that is also appropriate for paired sample t-test is a longitudinal study, or a single group study where the same test or the same assessment is used as the pretest and as the post-test before and after the intervention. So I want to emphasize that the second rationale, the second scenario, is more related to experimental studies, where the researcher or a school or a government agency tries to change uh, you know change the dependent variable in some way by introducing the intervention or introducing a program. But the first one could be like non-experimental um, design. So that's what I could see, the distinction between the first scenario and the second scenario. And let's go to some more concept here about the assumptions. There are two main assumptions for paired sample t-test. The first assumption is the independent variable is dichotomous. Dichotomous means there are two layers, there are two groups, there are two levels, and each levels or groups are paired or matched in some way. What do we mean by groups or pairs? Groups or levels are paired or matched in some way. For example, the researcher might administer the pre-test, and after some period of time, the researcher administer the post-test. Or I would like to borrow an example from a book by Professor Andy Field. Let's say a group of children is shown plastic spider, okay, and then the same group of children is shown real spider, and Professor Andy Field wants to know whether plastic spider condition and real spider condition causes more fear within the children. So in this situation, the groups are paired, or the levels are paired or matched in some way. Or as I said earlier, you want to know whether children's brothers or sisters spend more time on social media. A paired sample t-test is an appropriate choice. The second assumption is very easy to check, to verify. The dependent variable is normally distributed in the two conditions. For example, the level of fear of children when they were exposed to plastic spider condition have to be normal, and the level of fear of the same group of children when they were exposed to real spider condition have to be approximately normal also. So these are the main assumptions of paired sample t-test. Let's go to the next slide. Still some more concept, ladies and gentlemen. Here, the paired sample t-test is used when the two scores are repeated measures, such as cell esteem test score and cell esteem retest score. I have an example. Let's say this week, you survey certify, let's say foundation year students in one department, let's say history department at your university, and you measure their level of self-esteem, okay, and you follow them again 6 months after. You approach them and you measure their level of self-esteem again using the same instrument. You want to see whether their level of self-esteem have changed in some way. So when you use the same instrument in order to measure the level of esteem, this is called repeated measures. Repeated measures mean you use the same instruments or the same assessments or the same test twice. I would like to give one more example here. Paired sample t-test is used in a longitudinal study or a single group study where the same test or assessment is used as the pre-test and as the post-test before and after the intervention. Let's say at my school where I have been working, I could I could administer an English proficiency test, to the foundation year student when they start, their first year at my school, at my university. I ask them to do the test, okay, when they start their first year, and when they are about to graduate, I am going to ask them to do the same test again. So in this context, I also use the same assessment or the same test. So then I compare the pre-test with the post-test scores. My research hypothesis is this: there will be a big difference between students' pre-test and post-test scores. That involves, the performing of paired sample t-test. So finally, we go to SPSS. It's very, very easy. Let's go to the first three steps in order to produce the repeated measures t-test or paired sample t-test SPS output. We go to analyze. We go to compare means. We click on paired samples t-test. Please remember samples with S, paired samples with S. And step number 4, we move both variables, mainly pre-test and post-test score, to the paired variables box, and then we gonna click on OK. So just a few steps in order to get to the statistical results. So while I'm recording this movie, the world is embattled by COVID-19, and I want to take a real example here where paired sample t-test is appropriate. For example, you are interested in finding out some change in the way people conduct their daily lives. Let's say you decide to survey 55 people who are your neighbors. So you're gonna ask them, some activities that they used to engage in pre-COVID-19 situation, and as of March 30th, 2020 period. So you might want to know about the amount of times they spend at their workplace. You ask them about the amount of time they spend at their workplace before COVID-19, and right now, on March 30th, 2020, second dependent variable that we want to compare, amount of time they spend outside, and you operationalize, time spent outside as time they spend on shopping, on leisure, or engaging in sports, or dining, or social gathering, for example, having coffee with friends. And dependent variable 3, the number of times of hand wash before COVID-19, and as of March 30th, 2020. And then you can compare, you can use paired sample t-test in order to detect, such differences. I thank you very much.